This is Popping the Bubble with hosts Sandra Ponce de Leon and Pete A. Turner.
Hello, my name is Brian Solis. I am the principal analyst at Altimeter Group, also their futurist, and an author who writes books on paper in this digital economy. You are listening to Popping the Bubble.
Brian, it is so amazing to have you here. We've known each other for so many years, and you're so impressive. I love everything that you do. You're a serial author and keynote speaker around the world. You write about digital transformation and disruptive technologies. I always get informed when I speak with you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here, and no pressure whatsoever, I guess.
Right, no pressure at all. You wanted to know what we were going to talk about.
Well, this can't be as bad as speaking in front of thousands of people, in stadiums around the world, right? What's your biggest crowd been that you've presented in front of?
I honestly don't know. I'll tell you, it's somewhere near 10,000, but.
Do you kind of feel like a rock star when you go up on stage?
No, not at all.
Come on,
no, not
really?
at all. And those, believe it or not, are easier than the smaller, intimate gigs.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you can see people looking at you or checking their phone or...
Yeah, or I was just in China where it's customary to actually fall asleep. It's okay. So in the audience. That's also happened in meetings in Japan as well. But, look, it's all a blessing. I mean, the fact that if anybody shows up to hear what you have to say, you want to take it seriously and you want to hope that people remember you in a really good way. And so that brings with it nerves and this, desire to do good stuff. And, do I feel like a rock star? No, I feel like
I feel like you're a rock star, though.
I hope I did good enough to be invited back. That's where I hope to leave it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I forgot to mention is actually where we're recording here at The Vault. The Vault is a full stack innovation ecosystem and collaborative workspace. And here in the heart of Silicon Valley in San Francisco, The Vault brings together an extensive suite of startup advisory, acceleration, launchpad, collaboration services under one roof and serves as a gateway for startups and corporations to Silicon Valley, the global center of technological innovation.
I love that you just did that without reading anything.
Do you think that Silicon Valley is the heart of technological innovation, Brian?
I think that Silicon Valley is a major artery of it. For a long time, it certainly would have appeared that it was the heart and soul of innovation. But having been part of national and now international technology hubs, it's clear that it's everywhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, in different paradigms and at different levels, but I mean, if you go to Singapore or Paris, Station 9, if you go to London, there are several ecosystems that are just fantastic. You also have emerging hubs, for example, here in the States, like in Atlanta, that are just showing that with the right focus and the right support, people with ideas can go do whatever it is that they want and change the future. And I think that's really that's the point. All of this stuff has to be contagious. Otherwise, we get stuck in ruts and we get stuck in iteration, trying to do the same things better, and we limit our worldview.
Yeah. I love one of the things that you say is disrupt or die, right? And I think that that's something that, we all have to take to heart because, and even Silicon Valley, right, can be disrupted.
It actually is right now being disrupted. Mm-hmm. And I think we have a lot to learn. Mm-hmm. It is a bubble, and
how ironic!
It should be a name of a podcast.
It should totally be the name of a podcast.
We'd like to buy a vowel, though. We'd like to buy an E.
That's pretty funny because I think Silicon Valley as a whole, you'd think with all the money running around here, they could buy all the vowels, but none of these companies just want to get there. I will say this though, that there's a lot to learn. We have a lot to learn politically as well in our role in what technology and innovation means to humanity and the progress of society. So we don't do a lot of good work in sort of communicating that. We just come in and disrupt markets and take over and leave old things behind. And if you don't want to come along, then yes, disrupt or die. But it's good for a bumper sticker or a hashtag. But I think where my work has been is trying to bridge the gaps between those who do want to innovate and want to be disrupted, and those who don't.
Right.
Because the majority of people in the world they don't want to be disrupted. They don't like change, but they do love an Uber or a Lyft, or they do love a new iPhone, or they do love an Apple Watch. And so it's helping people understand the benefits of these disruptive technologies, but also helping businesses and schools and governments understand that people are changing.
Right.
So it's not just technology that gets disrupted, it's all of us. And that's my work these days. My passion is looking at what I call digital anthropology, is understanding how people are changing and looking for ways to steer it, productively, because none of this stuff came with a manual. None of this stuff came with parents or teachers to tell us, hey, you know what happens if you spend 1,500 minutes on your phone per week? Your brain does this, your body does this, your creativity does this. And so there's a lot of work to be done.
Mm-hmm. You talked about getting out of a rut, but sometimes you're in the groove. How do you navigate that?
Wow, that's you make me sound like vinyl. Well, these days I'm always in the groove with the right needle. So I'm writing a book that is sort of getting at that answer right now. I had to take a break from all of this innovation and studying paths of disruption and what it takes to actually be innovative. And I spent the last year writing a private research report for a global beauty brand that wanted to understand how social media and smartphones and apps like Facetune were affecting a woman's definition of self-beauty and also her self-esteem. And that report was transformative, although it'll never be released publicly, unfortunately. I decided to take a break from regular research and to really understand what else, if those results were so profound, what else is happening. And so the groove that you ask about is really all about what's the inspiration to have a positive impact on life, because I think success, especially around here, if you go to the Rosewood on a Thursday night in Menlo Park near Palo Alto and all the VC firms, you'll see some of the most amazing supercars parked in the front of that. And you go in there and it's just a complete, let's just call it the 1% of social scenes. But that's what I think people see in Silicon Valley, is that sort of image. A lot of success, a lot of startups that just cash out, a lot of really great entrepreneurs who become celebrities in their own right. But what you don't see is the effects of all of this stuff in day-to-day humanity, and that is where my passion, that's where my groove comes from now. Before, it was understanding all of these players. I helped advise, you name the startup. I've helped launch over 1,000 companies in my career. I've even sold a couple of my own and still have to work because all I could do was pay off the investments. But I hope that's a growing trend, right? In that there is this need to bring this new view into Silicon Valley. It all exists here. There's a lot of great people here who want to do great things. But I think we only hear about the unicorns and the next hundreds of, right now we have Lime and we have Bird and we have the whole scooter revolution. And, of course, it's easy to pay attention to those. But I think those who focus on, well, what happens when you litter streets with scooters all over the place without any regulation? It's a great idea. You have people irresponsibly running those things all over the sidewalk. And with innovation comes the need for governance. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but also at the same time, where's the voice on the other side, right? Where's the voice on, hey, we've got all of these technologies and we saw a lot of them used for ill will and they were hacked to hack our own minds in the last couple of elections, and where can we use that same brain power for good, right? Where are those conversations?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think that one of the new industries that I find so promising, specifically for positive change and impact, is the blockchain world. And there is all sorts of companies that are focused on blockchain for good, for social impact, and also the beauty of the blockchain technology itself is it really democratizes. The technology makes it open, transparent, and immutable. So I'm thinking of it because I'm actually working with a company called Nori, which is looking to reverse climate change actually by building a marketplace for carbon dioxide removal on the blockchain. So
I know Nori because of you,
yes.
and I think that that's a positive example of what's possible. I think blockchain, not to be confused with cryptocurrency and that interesting trend,
right?
In that there's a lot of deceit that I've already seen and uncovered and felt and had to deal with and bail people out of bad investments already.
Oh, man.
But blockchain I think is very promising because just the technology and its very premise is about transparency.
Right.
And as anything, I used to say with technology comes great responsibility, borrowing from the Peter Parker Spider-Man saga, that it's all in how you use it. And Nori, I think, is a great example of that. But, one of the things that inspires me is knowing that I don't have all the answers, not pretending to have all the answers, and just seeing what's happening in the world and where I can have a positive impact. It's led to what I call sort of my Madonna style career, in that I have to reinvent myself every few years or so just to stay relevant the older I get.
What era of Madonna are you in
right
now?
Yeah.
Are you in the childish? Give me strength. Give me joy.
Well, as you can tell by my white wedding dress that I'm wearing right now, like a virgin, I'm just coming out. I'm just trying to break out.
I love it. It's the experimental phase.
Well, that's the beauty of a podcast. I can invoke your imagination with words.
And you do look really good in that dress.
Thank you. Thank you.
You wear it well.
It's the Spanx.
When you talk about the responsibility that comes with a really shake-up in the digital world, who's the arbiter of that responsibility? Who's the mom who's like, you can't do that? Who is that?
I don't know. I'm a big fan right now of Tristan Harris. He's a good mom example in that he did work with Facebook and Google, and he pulled a magician's secrets revealed on how phones and social networks in general were designed to be addictive, and he shared the techniques. Intermittent variable rewards, for example, on how we would get, as users, addicted, and how that would unleash certain chemicals in our brains naturally that are not unlike what happens with slot machines. That's a role that's sort of new to all of this. That there's even a course at Stanford. I won't mention the professor's name, but he's famous. He's famous for teaching the concepts of persuasive design, and sort of coming back to that responsibility is, how do you want to use that knowledge?
Right.
And certainly that's just the beginning of this entire conversation. There's a whole underworld here in Silicon Valley that we all know, and not just here in Silicon Valley. I mean, if you look at cryptocurrency right now, there's a disgusting underworld.
That's true. Yeah.
Of just already people intentionally taking advantage of investors and defrauding other human beings. But where's the mom in that? So I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm subscribing to be to take on the mom role, but I am trying to understand what's happening so that I can find a positive impact to do that. Right. So, for example, one of the things that I'm doing after this beauty report is looking at the effects of how all of this stuff that we, this phone, these networks, these apps that we can't stop or put down, how that affects our ability to create. Or how we turn into sort of these this army of zombies of just consumers with the endless scroll. What does that do to ideation? What does that do to critical thinking? What does that do to your ability to be persuaded by mistruths? And there's
the impact on the younger generation as well.
Oh my goodness, absolutely, because they don't know the difference. And where's the mom role in that?
Right.
I think when I was working on this presentation for South by Southwest, where I talked about a lot of this stuff, and instead of where Tristan Harris really talks about this impact on design and design ethics and helping other startups and founders understand their responsibility to this, I was taking it to the consumer. This is what you're doing to yourself. This is what you're doing to your kids or to your loved ones. And I remember there was this one bit of research where this family was asked to install Moments on their smartphone, or Moments, which is sort of a precursor to what we see now with Google's digital wellness and Apple's wellness program. that tracks your use of social media and your apps and your phone, and it gives you this daily and weekly report, so you can see just how much time you're spending.
That'd be scary.
Oh, it's totally scary. And I remember the mom saying, "I'm afraid to install this because it's going to it might reveal that I'm a bad mom to my kids."
Oh my God.
I remember saying in my head, well, that's because you are. If you're leaning on how many hours on this device to entertain your children, that has an effect. And so then that's the thing. Well, what are the effects? There's actually, believe it or not, this research is just starting to happen. Like, for example, the more you consume this stuff, the thinner your frontal cortex is,
oh my God.
of which doesn't allow you to do certain things like feel empathy, which is
Yeah.
why you have cause fatigue, for example, on social media, or that it prevents you from going to these depths of greater concentration. It's just crazy, crazy stuff.
Are you familiar with Amber Case?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We actually had her on not that long ago, and she's working on her calm technology project.
I adore her.
Yeah.
She's one of the super people in this industry doing good and actually just so smart, so inspirational. I think that what we need are folks like folks like her, like also Genevieve Bell, who's a certified anthropologist who really studies all of this stuff as well. You know, to kind of come back to your question about the mom role, who is that? I think that's where Silicon Valley can take a lead too. Is someone's got to rise and talk about how to do something differently. So what I also don't want to be is that nagging voice of saying, you should put your phone down. Just spin it like judo and use it productively. What would you do differently if you knew what you now know?
Yeah.
Or if as this stuff starts to become known, and I'm using it as ways to rediscover things like, what does it mean to be creative? What does it mean to be inventive? What does it mean to be innovative? And how do you do that? What if your ideas, just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's great? I think I see that so often. I'm sure you all see it too in Silicon Valley. Everybody has ideas.
Right.
But what makes them special is that they can solve real problems or create real opportunities.
Yeah.
What are you doing yourself to have your behaviors changed, mobile or online?
One of the things you learn, it's a good question. One of the things you learn is that.
Hey everyone, this is Sandra from Popping the Bubble, and we're coming to you from The Vault in San Francisco.
What's the Vault?
Well, thank you for asking, Pete. The Vault is a full-stack innovation ecosystem and collaborative workspace.
Full stack innovation, ecosystem, collaborative work. That sounds super techy.
Well, you're right there, Pete. Full stack means that in addition to being a great place to collaborate and network for startups, The Vault has a full suite of startup advisory services, such as fundraising help, legal, IP, and marketing services.
Let's also mention how the Vault works with corporations through Viz, the Vault Innovation Services, and VIA, which is the Vault Innovation Academy, which also offers courses in developing innovation at scale.
The Vault celebrates innovators from around the world and provides entrepreneurs with the right tools and support to grow better and faster.
This segment of Popping the Bubble is brought to you by The Vault. Thanks to Kevin and his team for all the amazing work they do to fuel innovation in Silicon Valley and across the globe.
What are you doing yourself to have your behaviors changed, mobile or online?
One of the things you learn, it's a good question. One of the things you learn is that there are great parallels with addiction in anything. So substance abuse, you name it. So it was just even understanding that I was addicted.
Yeah.
Was a big step. And then...
Yeah, the first step is acknowledging
you
have a problem.
Yes, acknowledging you have a problem. And then what do you do about it? So I'm working on it. I do track how much time I use. I track how much, where it is. I track how much is consumption versus creativity. And also, there aren't a lot of, there's a lot of talk about yoga and meditation and mindfulness and, using apps like Headspace, which is ironic to use an app to treat a digital distraction or addiction. There are things like detox camps. But I've noticed that all of those things just treat the symptoms and not the core cause nor the problem. So that's where I am right now, is really studying what I'm dealing with and trying to translate all of that into this process of self-healing to then publish like actual written material and research. This is what it is, and this is what you got to do about it. So I'm trying to, unfortunately, self-diagnose and self-treat. But it's fascinating, all the things that you just do because it feels fun and it feels great and it feels like you're connecting to all your friends and your family and your loved ones, and it's all of the semblances of doing the right things, and then realizing that it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem is also that so many of us, it's part of our business. And it's a necessary function of what we do, either for clients or for work. We're on. So there's social media, community managers. I mean, what about those people?
Yeah, well,
is there hope for them?
I don't know. I mean, I guess anything in moderation, right, or anything with strategy, or I think if you know what you're dealing with, mm-hmm. then it's up to you to use anything productively, right? Mm-hmm. I love a great glass of champagne. I mean, could I turn that into addiction? Absolutely. But, I know what I know, and you manage it, and you do so. For example, I'll have a great glass of champagne when I need to just unlock creativity and let go of some stress. Like, you use things in ways that are productive. Mm-hmm. I think this is just coming to light that there are issues with it that are not necessarily productive.
Yeah.
But there's an author, by the way, of a book called Deep Work, and I think has a PhD from MIT, and he's come up with all of these models to understand how to get to these deep depths of research, of critical thinking, of cognitive work without distraction. Mm-hmm. And he's got 4 rules, and one of the rules is completely abandon social media. He says you don't need it at all.
Wow.
And I haven't gotten there yet, but I think the irony of that is that you're an author, and this is a powerful medium or series of channels to make yourself and your work more well known. So if you completely abandon it, then how do we know about you?
Exactly.
Yes. And
and if you're not a known author, how do you become familiar?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Do you hire people to do that for you?
Right, exactly.
Put them into the machine.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now you're a plantation owner with your workers out there in the social field singing songs. Let me ask you this. So we have all this data and we have this creativity stuff you're trying to wrap your hands around. My question is always like, are we any wiser? Like, just because you can find an article that supports your opinion on a Facebook rant doesn't mean that you're correct or any wiser at all. Are humans just at their max level for wisdom, or are we going to turn this stuff into something better at the wisdom level, do you think?
Oh, that's deep. I feel like I need a glass of red wine for that one.
Not even champagne.
Like a beret and a turtleneck.
As I like to say, I'm so niche, I'm Nietzsche.
That's pretty good. I think it's a pretty tough question. I'll just be honest with you. I think people think that they're wise.
Sure.
It's easy because of the validation you get when you express yourself online. That's the whole point of it, and that's why it can be misleading and dangerous. I do think we've not, in any way, shape, or form, come close to reaching our potential for wisdom. But I think wisdom is openness and understanding. I don't even think a wise person would call themselves wise. I think the part of it is that you're always a student. You're always learning. You're always observing. Yeah. You're always growing. And that's what I hope. That's what I hope we can get out of this, is that we have to realize that our networks, by design and maybe even subconsciously, have been forged out of cognitive bias. We surround ourselves with people who validate who we are, and when they disagree with you, you shut them out.
Yeah,
and those are all human responses, and so you're not going to build wisdom by playing that out. You are going to build wisdom by putting yourself in new and uncomfortable situations and be open to sort of observe and learn and adapt. And that's where I am, is trying to figure that out. I didn't realize that I was closed. I always thought I was open. I always believed I was open, and I started to realize that I was closed and closing at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, because bias, intolerance, and bigotry, all in the same circle. And it's real easy to think, I don't do that, but then you point the finger at somebody who's being intolerant, and you're like, well,
Yeah, well, the state of politics,
right?
I know.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to open that
Sure.
that wound, but I mean, I just watched this movie, this Disney movie. I can't remember the name of it, but one of the characters in the movie, she only quotes famous sayings from around the world, and her whole thing is she says the quote and then who said it and the country of origin. And one of the quotes, and forgive me because it's been a long day, I can't remember the person or the source of origin. But the quote was that light enters through the openness of a wound or something like that. And it's a critical moment, I think, in society, that I think the wound is that we've all built so many walls and validation circles around ourselves that we can't even see what's happening. We can't even see what we might not know or need to know.
Yeah.
All we can see is what someone else isn't or has done. And that's the first response of anything. And that's dangerous. This doesn't play out well if we're not willing to hold up a mirror and learn and unlearn. But you know, one of the things that I'm trying to realize, because everybody keeps saying, well, you can't get the other side to change their mind. You can't get anyone to the middle, you know, and I don't know that that's true. I think if you can understand what someone is dealing with or what's holding them back or what they're frustrated with or what they hate, at least, I'm not saying I can get someone to the middle, but at least I can learn and see a different perspective than I only saw my own before that, or those around me. I'm just a hopeless optimist. And I believe that, to your question about what does it take to be wise, I think it takes openness and humility. And I think too many people really want to believe that they're right. And all of this stuff that's happening proves that they were right all along.
Yep.
And that we've reached some type of flashpoint that suddenly the only way to communicate with each other is polarization. And then in that resolve, if you can't talk to the other side, then all you do is talk to your own side.
Yep.
And then we see the dangers on every facet of every side of this conversation is that then things like facts and truth become debatable. Things like conspiracy theories start to sound like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Like the Earth being flat. Oh my God!
Wait a minute. Are you telling me it is not?
It's not. I mean, sorry, yeah, Brian. Yeah, it's totally flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so on that like super uplifting and positive and motivational note.
This has been such an interesting, this is a whole new Brian that I'm not used to listening to or hearing. I mean, it's very, very fascinating. I love that you're going through this and sharing. I think that part of as we age, and I think humility is a big part of it. You do start to see that you're not always right. And I think also, you know, a lot of the systems are in place to create those divisions between us, right? We don't have a common ground that we can unite around because we are so polarized by the systems in place, much just like Facebook or our political systems, etc.
Yeah, and I think that's where, you know, look, I still study innovation and disruptive technologies and disruption itself, and I still write a lot of research on that. And yeah, I just wanted to share a different slice of my work today. That personally, I think that there's got to be some underlying motivation to all of this stuff because there's a bigger story here.
Yeah.
All of these things have impacts, and I think when you understand what those impacts are, you can figure out what are some of the productive and positive ways that you could spin anything. Like, so for example, I just published a Future of Retail Innovation report, and everybody says, you know, there's retail Armageddon, and you have no shortage of examples of retailers that are shutting down.
Right.
But a lot of that isn't just because, you know, people don't want to shop. A lot of that has to do with stuff you don't hear about, like leveraged debt and shareholders who don't want innovation, who just want to cash out and take their money and run. And like Toys R Us, I think their private equity firm that bought the company took $200 million out before they filed bankruptcy, of which completely depleted all of the employees' compensation for all of their years of work. You have a lot of bad stuff that's, you don't hear those stories, but at the same time, there are more than ever tremendous opportunities to use technology in great ways, to reinvent retail, to reinvent education, to reinvent government. All we have to do is just get people involved. We have to understand, what do people want? What do people need? How can we use this stuff in ways that aren't going to just disrupt industries, but also grow or create new opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great, and you're just awesome. And thank you so much for joining us.
It's my
really
pleasure.
Great to have you.
Any excuse to come here and visit the vault, see you all, come and hang out and be cool with the cool kids.
Yeah, you got to come hang out more often.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it here. Thank you.